I take up this notion of Steiner's preoccupation with imagination, encouraging it in the child. But Steiner was not an enlightened person. He was a sort of byproduct of theosophy. The ancient wisdom, yes, but that's not enlightenment. The ancient wisdom is whatever it was at whatever the time, date and place that you look at it. Not necessarily, something that would give life eternal. Not, for instance, the Jesus story, as purposed by the Jesus story, so to speak. And of course, you don't want an imagination in the child that's full of frightening things and ghastly things. And in fact, the history of man has been very much to protect the child from some of the harder realities of the world until they're old enough to know the way to go and to cope with such. So Buddha's brought up in a palace where he doesn't see illness, old age or death. And when he does, yes, it is appalling and a bit of an awful shock, but it's because he's coming from an experience of no such problems, and such problems seem appalling by comparison, and dynamize him to find the answer. And what is his answer? Well, his answer is to control the mind. We're concerned, apparently, to avoid suffering, dukkha, as it's referred to, dukkha. Much suffering is concerned with regret about the past and preoccupation with what could conceivably happen in the future, but might not. So we don't think about the past or the future. That's a solution, a Buddhist type approach. Because the present tends, for most of us much of the time, to be a bit mundane, but not terrible. Somewhere in it, of course, he's got the hope of an enlightenment of pure peace and joy. And there are various meditative practices that are designed with that hope in mind, that purpose, that goal. Jesus' story approach is not of meditation. It's of founding your imagination upon a particular cornerstone. And that cornerstone is not Jesus as it's taken to be in the Christian religion. He is not the cornerstone. What's been rejected is the cornerstone, the message, which is that God is your Heavenly Father. In other words, the name of God is in some sense taken to be crucial, because it implies how you think accordingly. And if you think of God as some raging, vengeful God from the mountains and God of war, judgment and condemnation, your life's going to be as unhappy accordingly. And if you think of him as a loving heavenly dad, dearest friend and so on, you have a completely different thought pattern, imaginative, purposeful being that's consistent with life eternal rather than destruction. It's very simple, really, isn't it? It's not rocket science. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. I suppose popularly we've been very impressed with rocket science, but really it's rather trivial physics and elementary logic and thinking and so on. Learning to live is infinitely more demanding. And we've managed to make phenomenal rockets. We supposedly can get to the moon and back now and still be alive at the end of the show. But we haven't mastered war and discord between us. Because, of course, that's precisely why we're here. That is our problem. Not rocket science. And it's something that each of us is engaged in. Trying to find a harmony amidst difference, variety, uniquenesses that collide with each other. And we're trying to find a personhood that's suitable for us, that's ideal, that's heavenly, of maturity, of peace and well-being. And of course, in large measure, we've not found it. In some measure we have. You know, nations do much of the time live peacefully with each other. It's just that it keeps erupting. And people in everyday relationship spend much of the time in harmony with each other. But there's certain issues that just flare up. And, you know, all hell is let loose. Yeah. So it's rather curious that we're impressed with our science, despite the fact that it's, well, if anything, it's adding to the terribleness of war, isn't it? Rather than bringing heaven on earth. And I'm not aiming to bring heaven on earth. I've not come to change the world. You know, Jesus is not praying for the world. He's praying for those that have ears to hear. Those that want God to exist. You and I. Wow.